All right, so now we're just going to move into the documentation part. So we don't need these parts from the previous video. We're just going to take this object, duplicate it, dragging it over with gumball tool. All right, and I no longer need these curves because this is what I'm going to consider the final model that now just needs to be turned into drawings. All right, so if I want to make sure that all the curves are gone, I could just type in select curve. Select closed curve is fine. Delete. I can also just select curve alone and delete all those stray curves that are apparently living in this model. Okay. So now that I have this nice and cleaned up, again, I'm gonna check where I want to do my section planes by using the clipping tool. So I'm just gonna make a new layer and I'll call it section guides. All right. And I'm gonna make this an orange layer. Maybe we'll make it there. All right, so I'm going to go into this layer and then I'm going to type in clipping plane and I'm going to make it vertical. And as you know from the project requirements, we need to make 4 short sections and 2 vertical long sections. What do I keep doing? V for vertical. Okay. Remember, when you're making your clipping plane, make sure that you click the vertical option. All right, so when I am making my final views, per the required deliverables. Keep in mind that we need 4 short sections of interest, and then we need some long sections, 2 long sections of interest. All right, so this is clipping plane 1, and by interest, I mean it's an occupiable space, it's a dynamic background, it's just, a dynamic assembly of shapes within the landscape. All right, so this might be interesting because I'm going through a doorway and I have an enclosed space. This might be interesting because, again, I'm going through a passageway, but I'm also under a covered space. So that could be section number 2. This could be section number 3 because I'm cutting through this atrium type courtyard space. And then section number 4 might be through here because it has a nice opening. But what I might do differently here is flip the clipping plane by typing flip. Um, if I think that it would be more interesting, which it would, if I cut it here. This way I can see through the full landscape. All right, so now that I have an idea of those locations, I'm just going to draw the lines, or I could do plane. Then do that. Before I delete the clipping plane, I'm going to draw a vertical plane where I have set up my clipping plane so that I know that that's a place of dynamic views. Right, and this ultimately will scale up and we'll use this to trim the drawings. All right, so now I'm going to keep going, pick what's interesting. Use some discretion, see which sides look, more exciting than others. It's more interesting to see this. Should I flip it? Is this more interesting to see? What feels like it relates to my image? You know? Um, so this is nice. Maybe I'll just leave it like that. Okay. And then we just need one more of those. And right here might be interesting because, um, right, well, there's 2 that might be interesting. This might be interesting because, again, I'm cutting through the landscape, cutting through my bridge. But if I flip it, I can have this interesting piece through here. This I know we cut a little bit sooner. Yeah, just double check, make sure that the spaces that you picked were actually picked in the section lineup. All right, so I'm just going to duplicate this. Over here, capture those spaces, and now I have my 4 short section planes. All right, so what I'm going to do is scale up these planes by just stretching the gumball tool, just so that I know that it'll make a nice clean snip. And I'm going to make 4 copies of this. It's maybe 5 models in total. I'll have 1 reference model, and then everything else will be trimmed. And I'm basically just going to trim. Type in trim, select cutting objects. I'm going to do 1 section cut at a time. So this is going to be I'm going to use this plane to cut this model and so on. Just delete the plane that you're not using. All right, and again, make sure you keep the reference point. That's going to help us later when we're making our drawings. All right, so now out of all these, I know that that's a clipping plane, that's a clipping plane, clipping, clipping. All right, so trim. I'm going to cut over here. I'm going to cut over here. I'll cut this section. And I will cut this section. Right. And now delete all the parts and pieces that you ultimately did not use. Right, and at this point you can just delete your plane. I recommend rotating this to all face the same direction. Oh, looks like I still have my clipping plane here. Delete your clipping planes when you're done using them. There's a way to turn off the clipping plane in the settings, but you don't need to worry about that. Just delete them. Oh, well, now that makes sense why I was missing a piece. So you see, I still had a clipping plane all the way over here, and that's why these models got all funky. So just be careful not to get caught up in your clipping plane, everyone. Now I understand why that was a little funky, more funky than anticipated. Okay, that still cuts. This one I will still push through this way. All right. So I'm just gonna repeat those previous steps. Maybe it's a good thing. Um, just copy it over 4 times. Again, delete the ones that you are not using for each section. All right, so this is my cutting tool. All right. Great. All right, we're just gonna keep on moving. Delete the parts that were trimmed or that just weren't captured in the trim because we don't need them. And I'm just gonna rotate this to 180 degrees so that they're all facing the same direction. Okie And just because it's convenient, gonna add a little guideline for everything to be justified too. So that's nicely laid out. This one still needs to be aligned. All right. So now we can see which parts and pieces we are cutting. And at this point, you choose what's solid and what's not. So, um, depending on what's, most comfortable for you, you might choose to leave these planes and allow your objects to trim the planes, or you want to just delete them entirely and fill in the sections. I'll show, a quick little description. So if I selected my model and I trimmed my section cut plane, this will show me everywhere that I cut through the land. All right, so that's a very quick and easy solution. Quick, easy way to see what was cut, what wasn't. We could do that again here, so you can see that. Just simple trim tool. All right, and the other option is to just model it yourself. You could type cap for objects that you know are supposed to be cut through. We wouldn't do this for an opening like this, like the one that I'm hovering over, mainly because that's an occupiable space. All right, so when you see the orange, when you see the color of the plane that you use, that might make it a little bit more intuitive. The choice is yours. It's basically the same result. Um, yeah, just for this demonstration, I think I'm going to select the objects and use that to trim the orange. Yep. Just keep it consistent. Yep. Okay, so now I have my short and section cut models. All right, I'm going to do the same thing now with the long section. So let's bring back our clipping plane. We're going to type in V for vertical, make sure that it's a vertical clipping plane. Front corner, back corner, vertical piece. And we're just going to travel through time. And I want to be able to capture the bridge maybe, where it rests on the site, what it covers. Seems rather interesting. You can also see how this shape gets formed, which is pretty cool. That's why it might be interesting to even see that bridge, but that's pretty much all you see. Yeah, I don't recommend doing something so close to the edge. So let's just not do that. I'll cut this here instead. And that will be plane number one. So plane, plane, V for vertical, start piece, end piece, extrusion. Okay. So now we're going to keep moving through the site and try to find something else that's interesting. So maybe the relationship here is most interesting because I can see where the earth is cut and where I created these little tunnels. And so maybe tunnels will be focused on here. If not, then maybe this is more of a focus where I can have a double height space and a low space. But this time around, I'll flip the direction of the section plane so that I could see a little bit more. Right, and here we'll be able to see that the bridge actually cuts into here. All right, so that's another option. Again, I want to make sure we're not stuck too far out, too far to the grid. All right, another nice view might be through this inner courtyard. But right now I'm just gonna focus on this one. Yep, okay, very good. So drawing my second plane, vertical, up, and now I'm going to duplicate this. All right, before I duplicate it, get rid of those flipping planes, please. Don't want to cause any more confusion. All right. And now this is my original model, so I don't need those planes. I'm just going to work from here. I will rotate it 90 degrees, and I will duplicate it twice. Okay. So just like before, we're going to trim our site with our planes. All right, this one is going to, oh, have those extra curves. We don't need them from our final files, so let's just delete them from here. All right, this is going to trim front section here. That one's not needed. Okay, so now I just want to make sure that these lines are all connected. I'm going to draw a little reference line to make sure that everything's aligned. Okay. So again, just to keep it consistent, I'm going to select my landscape and use that to trim the orange plane. All right, so we see where our main base level is cut. First level's up, in and around these spaces. Actually, I believe this opening should be cut and that opening should be cut. So if it wasn't able to trim all of the objects, feel free to just do that now. All right, you see I'm just using the little trim tool again. Very convenient tool. This shape is a little hard to see, so I'm just going to delete that straggler. We see that the bridge is cut. We see a door opening, height, single height, another opening, little valley. All right, and over here, looks like, again, we need to cut a miss opening, and that one lives right here. Okay, so now that I have all of my section cuts and my site plans, I actually just realized that I deleted my guideline for my section cuts, but need not fear. I will just copy this depth. Just making a box, put out to the exterior frame. Same thing here. And this is how I will just make sure I'm copying the right side. All right, so this piece is over here. Simple rotation tool. Right, so I know that my plane is here. So plane, what I wanted, set view. All right, if you accidentally type in plan, it'll just bring you to top view. So just change it back to perspective from the little arrow in your viewport. All right, so plane, vertical, front corner, back corner. All right, so I don't need that box anymore because I know where it's cut. All right, it's basic cleanups, vertical planes, horizontal planes, whatever's needed. All right, and let's just move that over into alignment with the original model. Start point, end point. All right, so now I know where all my section planes are. So when I'm making my site plan, all I need to do is make 2D, and I can include hidden lines if I'd like. I want to keep my angles, so layers, let's see how that looks. All right, so these are just the generic make 2D lines. All right, so we can see all the different planes, we can see the hidden lines, and we can also see our section cut lines. But I feel like maybe for this, it might be better to show the objects in our make 2D. Yep, much easier to see the different layers and what should be hidden and what is not. Right, so two choices. All right, so that seems like it's a much better option because it still counts as a make 2D. All right, so drawing number one, I'm just going to rotate it back to 90. Great. Now I'm going to export the front views, which are right here. All right, but it looks like, yep, we're good. So selecting these objects, make sure that these are the only objects that you have selected, nothing strayed. We might actually be able to do all four of these at once. So let's give that a try. Make sure you just properly copy and you don't duplicate it the way I just tried. Okay, so now I'm going to just delete these extra bounding boxes that I just used for reference. Back to the front view, select all of these objects, zoom selected, make 2D. All right, so back to plan view, and we can see everything that was salvaged. All right. What you're also going to do for each of those section cuts is produce a rendering. So let's take these drawings and move them all the way over here so we don't accidentally drag them. Take these drawings, and what we can do is go to our rendered view, or we could go to the Arctic view. All right, whatever looks best on your computer. Select the object, zoom selected, deselect, and type in view capture to file. All right, when it comes to finalizing our drawings, our earth cuts or section cuts, we're going to use our hatch to fill that. We don't have a hatch here yet. Right now we're just extracting these images. Okay, so project 3 tutorials. And you're going to do this for each section. All right, again, there's only 6. Nothing too crazy. All right, just file saving. Zoom selected. View capture. All right, now our long sections. Again, view capture to file. And this time I'm just going to call it long section 01. All right, and this is going to be 02. All right, so now when you take your line drawings, you can overlay them with those Arctic. All right, so for tomorrow, Wednesday, I hope to see all 7 of these drawings drawn. It shouldn't be too long, especially since you all mostly have your models done. But feel free to send an email if you have any questions. Thanks.